There is one organized force which traditionally, plenty of flaws, but with all its flaws, it's been in the forefront of efforts to improve the lives of the general population. That's organized labor. It's also a barrier to corporate tyranny. So it's the one barrier to this vicious cycle going on, which does lead to corporate tyranny. A major reason for the concentrated, almost fanatic attack on unions, on organized labor, is they are a democratizing force. They provide a barrier that defends workers' rights, but also popular rights generally. And that interferes with the prerogatives and power of those who own and manage the society. I should say that anti-union sentiment in the United States among elites is so strong that the fundamental core of labor rights, the basic principle in the International Labor Organization, is the right of free association, which would mean the right to form unions. The U.S. has never ratified that. So I think the U.S. may be alone among major societies in that respect. It's considered so far out of the spectrum of American politics, it literally has never been considered. Remember, the U.S. has a long and very violent labor history as compared with comparable societies. But the labor movement had been very strong. By the 1920s, in a period not unlike today, it was virtually crushed.
A truck driver strike was climaxed by severe riot with many casualties.
Open warfare rages through the streets of the city as 3,000 Union pickets battle 700 police. Guns, tear gas, clubs, and fists bring injuries to more than 80 persons and cause the death of 2.
By the mid-30s, it began to reconstruct. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he himself was rather sympathetic to progressive legislation that would be in the benefit of the general population, but he had to somehow get it passed. So he informed the labor leaders and others, force me to do it. What he meant is go out and demonstrate, organize, protest, develop the labor movement. When the popular pressure is sufficient, I'll be able to put through the legislation you want.
I am not for a return to that definition of liberty under which for many years a free people were being gradually regimented into the service of a privileged few. I prefer that broader definition of liberty.
So there was a kind of a combination of a sympathetic government and, by the mid-30s, very substantial popular activism. There were industrial actions, there were sit-down strikes, which were very frightening to ownership. You have to recognize a sit-down strike is just one step before saying, we don't need bosses, we can run this by ourselves. And business was appalled. You read the business press, say, in the late 30s, they were talking about the hazard facing industrialists and the rising political power of the masses, which has to be repressed. Things were on hold during the Second World War, but immediately after the Second World War, the business offensive began in force. Taft-Hartley Act.
The Taft-Hartley Act was written for only one purpose: to restore justice and equality in labor management relations.
The McCarthyism was used for massive corporate propaganda offensives to attack unions. It increased sharply during the Reagan years. I mean, Reagan pretty much told the business world, if you want to illegally break organizing efforts and strikes, go ahead.
They are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Continued in the 90s, and of course with George W. Bush, who went through the roof. By now, less than 7% of private sector workers have unions. The effect is that the usual counterforce to an offensive by our highly class-conscious business class has dissolved. Now, if you're in a position of power, you want to maintain class consciousness for yourself, but eliminate it everywhere else. You go back to the 19th century, in the early days of the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Working people were very conscious of this. They, in fact, overwhelmingly regarded wage labor as not very different from slavery, different only in that it was temporary. In fact, it was such a popular idea, that was a slogan of the Republican Party. Well, that was a very sharp class consciousness in the interests of power and privilege. It's good to drive those ideas out of people's heads. You don't want them to know that they're an oppressed class. So this is one of the few societies in which you just don't talk about class. In fact, the notion of class is very simple. Who gives the orders, who follows them? That basically defines class. It's more nuanced and complex, but that's basically it.